This is the USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Welcome to a new Zeta report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We're live first Mondays of every month, a partnership with ZetaTalk.com and Zeta Talk with USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We're happy to welcome back to the show Nancy Leader from Zeta Talk. Nancy, you're there?
Hi, yes I am. I'm looking forward. Tonight's show is what I would call very powerful information, how from different cultures and different times, it all was relaying the same message about what a passage of Nibiru means for the earth, what is pending in our future, what has happened in the past. It's phenomenal, the sources that come together and say the same message. And I call it many, many voices, same message. Before we get going, just let me read the disclaimer. In partnership with USA EBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit ZetaTalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. Questions from the chat and issues raised in the chat will be addressed toward the end of the hour after the main feature has been presented. Throughout the ages, various prophets have sought to warn the populace about the periodic passage of Nibiru. The pole shifts of the past have been depicted and the coming pole shift laid out as a warning. The sequence of events is presented and the timeline is routinely missing. This is important because toward the end of this hour, I will explain how we may have gotten a timeline. Where we're always saying the date is not to be known, we may have been given a clue. These warnings are often allegorical or depicted in myth as a story populated with fantastic characters. In many cases, the warning is passed down as a verbal story or allegorical, but can be deciphered. Shiva. In India, the god Shiva, the god of destruction and renewal, represents Nibiru. Shiva also has a red aspect about him. Sure sounds like Nibiru. Quoting Wikipedia, the cosmic functions of creation, maintenance, and destruction are personified by the forms of Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the maintainer or preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer or transformer. These three deities have been called the Hindu triad. Kali. Kali is one of Shiva's wives, has a dusky blue color. This seems to be the Earth's dark twin. Quoting Wikipedia again, the name Kali means black, time, death, Lord of death. Kali is represented as the consort of Lord Shiva, on whose body she is often seen standing. Kali is portrayed mostly in two forms, the popular four-armed form and the ten-armed Mahari form. In both of her forms, she is described as being black in color, but is most often depicted as blue in popular Indian art. Do we have evidence that the dark twin exists? Per Zeta Talk, the presence of Nibiru in the inner solar system has blocked the Earth orbit, so the dark twin, which normally rides exactly opposite the Earth in their shared orbit, has moved up behind the Earth. It has indeed been seen and photographed. It appears at dusk when one looks out along the orbit path, and been photographed many times. And by the way, this has only started since Nibiru came into our inner solar system in 2003. At that point, it started to become visible. So because of the way sunlight bouncing the angle, being able to see something, some of the best images happened in 2004, and thereafter it was after dusk, looking out in the orbit behind us, which would be to the west, just at dusk or after dusk, there it is. Okay, here we go.
Well, Nancy, go ahead. If I might interrupt, not necessarily about the prophecy so much, but recent sightings of an extra moon opposite our moon at about a week ago, a couple of different sightings, one in Berlin and one in I believe in Africa or the Middle East, and it could possibly be the dark twin, but we're not really told what's going on, I guess. So
was it in the
we have to kind of figure it out.
Sky, I take it, right?
Night sky, right?
It would have to be in the night sky, yeah. Boy, I'd have to look into that. It's supposed to be coming closer and closer until we get into the last weeks. And the last weeks are such a squeeze. Venus is pressed toward us. The dark twin is pressed toward us. And here comes Nibiru preventing anybody from getting away because these particle flows come around Nibiru from either side, forming like a crab-like pinch. So we have these three planets, Venus, the Earth, and the dark twin, all of which are about the same size, bumping around in there in the pincers. And Venus moves on, pops out and moves on. The dark twin slips behind the Earth and pops out and moves on. And then Nibiru affects the passage of Earth and barrels on out of the solar system. So this is why the dark twin appears in Indian mythology and in death and destruction, etc., because it looms large. We'll be able to see these Venus and the dark twin, as well as Nibiru, as the last weeks approach, and it's getting closer. They're all getting closer. The last weeks are getting closer too. Okay, the dark twin has a blue. Yeah, what, Andrew? Yeah.
Oh, no. I was just wanting to say thank you. That's all.
Oh, come on. No, thank you.
Right.
It has a blue or purple color, but also, per the Zetas, reflects yellow light. Quoting folks in the U.S. who saw it in 2004 when the angle for bounced sunlight was optimal in April 2004. All over the world, these reports came in, and I quote, "What the heck is that star in the sky? I know that it was at least 3 times bigger than Venus has ever appeared. It is brighter than others, and it is always low on the horizon. I've been seeing it here in Phoenix, Arizona for a week now. It's very obvious. It is due west, in the western sky about 10 p.m. my time." And somebody else says, "Truly, this is for real. I live in suburban Detroit. I saw it in the sky around 11 o'clock p.m. It was so huge, I thought it might be an airplane coming in. I believe it was in the southwest sky, low on the horizon, and the fact that it was so huge is what caught my eye." As I mentioned, it was at that time that the sunlight bouncing off the dark twin to Earth was optimal, and now we see it in the night sky, and it takes on a different effect, Okay, the Kachina, the Hopi Indians, also depict Nibiru and the Earth's dark twin as the red Kachina and blue Kachina. These are certainly the colors of these planets when they become visible. Per the Zetas, the Earth's dark twin comes up behind the Earth in their shared orbit, is pushed close to the Earth, but escapes from this crunch during the last weeks. This approach in drama is described in the Hopi prophecy. Note the parallel to the India mythology, where Kali prevails over Shiva and stands over his dead body. Yet the Hopi and the Hindus of India are on the other side of the world from one another geographically. Quoting Hopi prophecy. This is amazing. This is a correlation I'm trying to make here, that India mythology and Hopi mythology are describing the same drama in the same colors and the same interaction of these planets. And I'm quoting the Hopi prophecy. When the blue star Kachina makes its appearance in the heavens, the fifth world will emerge. This will be the day of purification. It will come that when the Sasquahui, which is the blue Kachina, dances in the plaza and takes off his mask. In the final day, we will look up in the heavens and we will witness the return of the two brothers who helped create this world in the birthing time. The twins will be seen in our northwestern skies. The return of the blue Kachina, who is also known as Nangasohu, will be the forewarning that tells us there will soon be a new day, a new way of life, and a new world coming. When the purifier comes, we will see him first as a small red star, which will come very close and sit in our heavens watching us. This purifier will show us many miraculous signs in our heavens. Then one morning we will awaken to a red dawn. The sky will be the color of blood. Well, clearly we're talking the dark star looming, the dark twin looming close and being seen as a bluish color. And then here comes Nibiru, the purifier. Where the Kachinas of the Hopi and the Hindu gods are making cosmic allegories, in Finland and China the warnings detail the weather. In Finland, there is an end-time prediction about flooding, which is understandable due to Finland lying at the end of the Baltic Sea, a bay where ocean sloshing will wash water ashore. The Norse god Helmdalir would blow the mythical Gjallerhorn during a time of very cold winters to warn of the Viking apocalypse. This legend seems to be specific to Finland, not to the world. And sometimes that's the case. Legends are specific to the country. And then this is also true of reports from China 3,600 years ago. During the last pole shift, i.e., 1600 before Christ, the reign of Emperor Jie of Xia suffered, and this was well recorded, and I quote, "In the 29th year of King Shen, the sun was dimmed. King Shen lacked virtue. The sun was distressed. During the last years of Shen, ice formed in mornings and frost in the 6th month. Heavy rainfall toppled temples and buildings. Heaven gave severe orders. The sun and moon were untimely. Hot and cold weather arrived in disorder. The 5 cereal crops withered and died." End of the quote. Now, boy, doesn't that sound like some of the weather we're getting, where it's unusually cold in some places and very, very warm. Europe and across Persia and Afghanistan, etc., all the way to the Far East, they're having scorching hot weather in our southwest in the U.S., and here in the morning, it's down 50, even 60 degrees in the mornings. I don't even have my air conditioner in yet. It's just bizarre.
Right.
All right.
It is weird. But
yes, it is.
You know what?
Yeah.
It's weird everywhere, though. I mean, it's not just us.
Yes.
Like, I think this weekend, they had like 1.5 feet of hail in Spain or something. It's weird. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, extreme hail. I mean, Denver had things that were the size of baseballs, or it's such a deluge of rain, or all of a sudden a drought. Somebody was saying, we have drought here. 5 miles over the hill, they can't get rid of the rain. And nobody, it's just very extreme, which was predicted by the Zetas, by the way, and it fits with some of these descriptions of what countries dealt with prior to the recorded pole shift. China having this cold. Now here's something else, different. report from China, and it's mythology, allegorical. But what's fascinating is that the Zetas were able to pinpoint exactly which prior pole shift this NuWa legend was talking about. And I found that astonishing, and they confirmed each other. This one confirms Zeta talk and vice versa. The legend of NuWa in China is highly allegorical but clear in its description of the crustal shift that occurred. The NuWa legend describes the globe tilting during past pole shifts, so the sun and north appear in new locations. The sky moved to the northwest and the globe slid to the southeast. I quote from PowerPoint Paradise site. The Chinese legend tells how the world was swept by a great flood, and only Fuzi and his sister NuWa survived. There was a quarrel between the two of the more powerful gods, and they decided to settle it with a fight. When the water god Gong Gong saw that he was losing, he smashed his head against Mount Bruzu, a pillar holding up the sky. The pillar collapsed and caused the sky to tilt toward the northwest and the earth to shift to the southeast. This caused great floods and suffering to the people. NuWa was unable to fully correct the tilted sky. Okay, crustal shift stayed there. Now how does that relate to Zeta talk? The directions given are so accurate they can be correlated with Zeta talk descriptions of recent pole shifts. The ice ages of the past correlate with the location of the North Pole in the past, which for inexplicable reasons moved from Wisconsin to Scandinavia to Greenland. For the Zetas, it was the pole shift 14,400 years ago that moved the North Pole from North America to Scandinavia, and this would have caused the crustal shift described in the NuWa legend. Such a shift would push Asia and the China coastline into the water, thus the flood descriptions. For someone in China and Southeast Asia used to seeing Polaris and related constellations overhead and slightly to the east, all this shifted at that time to being in the northwest. It's so logical. Okay, last week's, but in some cases, such as the descriptions of the Jewish Talmud, or the Christian Bible, or in the Egyptian Kolbrin, or the Muslim Hadiths, or the Buddhist Visuddhi-Magga, or the Book of Enoch, which was omitted from the Bible, a written description is given. Where these warnings seem to differ, they in fact are delivering the same message. One oft-repeated warning in both the Hadiths and the Talmud is the sun rising in the west for several days prior to a passage. In the Talmud, this is for a period of 7 days before the passage. In the Hadiths, the sun rising from the west goes on for 6 days. Now, mind you, the Hadiths are Muslim and writings, and the Talmud is Jewish. So here we go again, confirming each other and confirming Zeta talk. And per the Zetas, this is within the last weeks, but in some weeks before the actual hour of the pole shift. Where the length of time differs, the fact of the sun rising in the west during the last weeks is consistent, and even seems to be a message delivered by some crop circles. Likewise, in both the book of Joshua and the 12th Iman, a stopped rotation is mentioned, and the book of Exodus refers to a dark sky and the earth turning over, and I quote from the Talmud, 7 days before the deluge, the Holy One changed the primeval order, and the sun rose in the west and set in the east. Quoting the Hadiths, the hour will not be established until the sun rises from the west. Look at that time for a violent wind, an earthquake being swallowed up by the earth, pelting rain and signs following one another like bits of a necklace falling one after the other when its string is cut. Quoting the 12th Iman, the rising of the sun from the west, one of the things which must happen between the decline of the sun at noon and the time of the afternoon prayer, the sun will remain still. Quoting the book of Joshua, and the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, and the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. So the sun stood still in the midst of the heavens, and haste not to go down about a whole day. Quoting the book of Exodus, midday is no brighter than night. Ships were sucked away from their moorings and destroyed in great whirlpools. The earth turned over as clay spun upon a potter's wheel. Now here we have the Bible, the Talmud, the Hadiths and the 12th Imam, which are Islamic, and they're all saying the same thing. Another repeatedly mentioned sign of a pending passage of Nibiru is an earth wobble. Rather than describing this in technical terms, as Zeta Talk has done, as a figure eight formed by the North Pole of Earth, this is described as a confused sky. Because in many cases, you're talking to people who may not even understand that the earth is not flat. This is allegorical for sometimes primitive peoples who look up and they don't know that we have a globe. They don't know about other countries or latitude and longitude and yet, et cetera, et cetera. So if they say, well, the North Pole is forming a figure eight, it would be confusing and too technical. So it's described differently. The moon moving too rapidly, stars out of place, and in general the populace not paying attention to these signs. The wobble has been with us since 2004 and is getting worse. But how we correlate all this with a time frame is not clear. Once again, we're not given a time frame. The question I'm asked at least once a day, well, when is this going to happen? I said, well, the date is not to be known. We're given a series of events, a sequence of events, but everybody will tell you the date is not to be known. But coming up, we're going to have a clue. The Kolbrin does an excellent job describing this, as does the Book of Enoch, which was excluded from the Bible on purpose. It was excluded because it gave too much precision about the signs of Nibiru approaching. And those people that wanted to keep this secret for themselves, I've heard it said that the Illuminati in the past, the powerful people, the religious elite, the wealthy, the kingships, they wanted to keep the information that Nibiru would return to themselves because it's very powerful information, and you can manipulate the common man, if they don't have this knowledge and to the way you want, which they're doing today with the cover-up. The rich are building their bunkers, and the poor people are buying land along the coastlines, which is going to become worthless when the tides start washing the coastlines away. Okay. The Kolbrin does an excellent job describing this, as does the Book of Enoch, as I said, quoting from the Kolbrin. When ages pass, certain laws operate upon the stars in the heavens. Their ways change. There is movement and restlessness. They are no longer constant, and a great light appears redly in the skies. The heralds of doom will appear. They will come softly, as thieves to the tombs. Men will not know them for what they are. Men will be deceived. The hour of the destroyer is at hand. Quoting from the book of Exodus, strange omens in the skies. Quoting from the book of Enoch, which was omitted from the Bible, and you'll see why in a minute. And all things on earth shall alter, and shall not appear in their time, and the moon shall alter her orbit, and not appear at her time. And in those days the sun shall be seen, and he shall journey in the evening on the extremity of the great chariot in the west. And he shall shine more brightly than accords with the order of light. And many chiefs of the stars shall transgress their order. And these shall alter their orbits and tasks, and not appear in the seasons described to them. And the whole order of the stars shall be concealed, and the thoughts of those on earth shall err concerning them. Well, we have that. We have a wobble that puts the constellations in the wrong place. The sun is rising and setting in the wrong place. I keep hearing, In Wisconsin, for instance, or Michigan, people say, "Wow, the dawn comes up way in the northeast, way too far, and setting, that
really
type of thing."
Far
and
north.
and they notice this, and if they try to get anyone to pay attention to them, like the weatherman or observatories or NASA, it's like, you're nuts, you don't know what you're looking at, and, that type of thing. So the moon altering, yeah?
Right. The moon altering, but also when you're speaking about the rising and the setting of the sun, I'm not sure who it is on on the pole shifting that does the tracking of the azimuth of the rising and the set. Is she with the university here or at
No.
Madison?
I know her well, Mrs. Sakamaki, and she's in Wisconsin, and she gets up in the morning and she notices where the azimuth of the sunrise is and the time, and correlates that to where it's supposed to be, and it's never where it's supposed to be, So, but there's also some people in Michigan who have noted that the sun is rising way too far to the northeast, and people have talked about that in Europe also. So it's beginning to get extreme enough. There was even a thread on Godlike Production, which has some pretty bright people that go and do analysis. And it was a pinned thread, and I copied a lot of the comments down and made it a newsletter feature. Oh, it's light out, the dusk, twilight. We're supposed to have light, twilight, or dusk an hour after the sun goes down. And they said, it's midnight, and it's still twilight out there. What's going on? It didn't necessarily last, but for 2 or 3 weeks, that was going on. The thing about the wobble is it moves around, and it's irregular. You can have, it moves around, let's put it that way, but it's bizarre enough that people are beginning to notice this and ask questions. And I have always said, I think that that's going to be one of the things that the cover-up will not be able to deal with is a wobble. And that's because you can say almost anything, that the sun's rays are causing electromagnetic pulse. Or you can say that even if you see visibility, something in the sky, they can say, but light bends, and that's just, sort of like sundogs or something. And they make up all kinds of excuses. But a severe wobble, where the sun is appearing all over the place, different places, how are they going to explain that one? A combination of things like increased visibility and a wobble, and we are starting to get more revealed in the media. They're starting to talk about, it's like we've gone back to 1983 when they went out seeking Nemesis, which is this dark binary of the sun out there, static binary, not in a dance with our sun. And then when they found Nibiru coming in its sling orbit, they said, never mind, it was all a mistake. And now we're going back to that time, and they're talking about the sun has a binary, a dark unlit binary, and talking using the proper name, which is Nemesis, and that was in the press all over the place in the early 1980s, before 1983 when they discovered infrared balloon discovered that, and also using the right term for Nibiru in the media a lot. So they're getting closer, to an admission, and it may be that the prongs will still come forward and make the announcement, by a series of astronomers in various countries chirping in. I just don't know how it's going to happen, but we are getting closer.
Right.
As has been noted by many. Yeah?
I was just going to say the NASA is giving away some clues too by putting up that 747 infrared telescope, Sophia. Have you heard? The telescope that's mounted inside a 747 that's been taking flights and doing sunrises and sunsets, and it doesn't. It's one of those planes that's so expensive to put into the air because it's so technologically, it takes a bunch of money to put it in the air. So it's mainly used to spot asteroids, comets, that sort of thing. But it's got
here's another opportunity for them. Right.
Right.
They can quote unquote discover what's been there all along. In the Dark Energy Survey, the prongs were going to have the Dark Energy Survey, which is out of that Chile observatory, run by the ESA of Europe, and they were going to go back through older images looking for exoplanets close in. I thought, well, there it is. They're going to discover, there it is in 2003, and oh, it's next to the sun. Oh, maybe that's that thing that everybody's talking about, the object next to the sun. And it was like they could do it in one swoop, because they have all that they need, but then it stopped and it stalled, and I just don't know. There's a lot of opportunities, but just which direction it's going to come from, I don't know. The moon has been noted by many. Presently, it has a tilted face and an extreme orbit. Pictographs from the Middle Ages also show the moon turning his face away from Nibiru. Other than giving the warning that these things precede a passage, we are not given a time frame. Once again, not given a time frame. In the opinion of the Zetas, the moon is avoiding the heavy traffic lane, quoting Zeta talk. The moon, as a bead on the edge of the hat rim traveling around the hat, is seen in the extreme north during part of the month and at the extreme south 2 weeks later. Why? A turmoil mostly present at the ecliptic, which the moon normally rides. The easy out for the moon is to avoid the crowded lane, which it does by being too high and then too low for the majority of the orbit. Now, I presented this as a hat that is tilted, and normally it's on the head, tilted very slightly. It's supposed to be like a 5-degree offset from straight across. But now it's more like 20 to 30 degree offset. And when you watch the face of the man of the moon, it's supposed to rotate only about 5 degrees as you go through the night staring at it. And now it's like a 90-degree rotation. And people have taken pictures of this, and said this is what it's supposed to look like, but this is what it really looks like. And here it is, and then 6 hours later, here it is. And oh my gosh, it's so well documented, especially on my website. The Kolbrin does give a time frame for the warning given to NuWa. He took 2 years to build his ark and noted a swift passage of the moon across the night sky. This would likely indicate an extreme wobble, but again, an exact timeline is missing. Quoting the Kolbrin, they had knowledge of signs and omens, the secrets of the seasons, of the moon and the coming of the waters. There were wise men filled with the inner knowledge, who read the book of heavens with understanding and knew the signs. Then the day came when the lady of the night changed her garment for one of a different hue, and her form swept more swiftly across the skies. Her tresses streamed out behind in gold and copper, and she rode in a chariot of fire, end quote. Now here's a clue. Rapid movement of the moon across the sky. I've had people tell me that they've been laying on their back, looking at the night sky, and they saw it go whoop, that type of thing. But, like I would say a couple of feet or something like that, and then stop. The wobble does happen quickly, but for it to spin all the way across the sky, well, that's an extreme wobble back and forth, etc. We're not there yet, I don't think, but we may be. The description of the passage itself, where Nibiru seems to stand between the earth and sun, red dust and debris and hail everywhere, earthquakes and tidal waves everywhere, is found in many sources. These descriptions encompass the last week and the hour of the pole shift itself. And they go on and on. We know what's coming. We just don't have timing, Well, when is the date? The Buddhist Visuddhi-Magga describes the debris in the lashing tail, as do the books of Exodus and Revelation and the Kolbrin. Red dust and fireballs have been on the increase steadily since Nibiru arrived in the inner solar system in 2003, but not the heavy gravel predicting the hour of the pole shift. Quoting the Visuddhi-Magga, a Buddhist text, when a world cycle is destroyed by wind, first it raises a fine dust, then coarse dust, then fine sand, then coarse sand, then grit, stones up to boulders as large as trees. Quoting the book of Exodus, the river was bloody, the earth was filled with redness. It twisted about itself like a coil. It remained close to the sun, whose face it hid. Quoting the Kolbrin, then was a dawning. Men saw an awesome sight. There, riding on a boiling cloud, came the destroyer, newly released from the confines of the sky vaults, and she raged about the heavens, for it was her day of judgment. The beast with her opened its mouth and belched forth fire and hot stones, and a vile smoke. It covered the whole sky above, and the meeting place of earth and heaven could no longer be seen. Well, what happens during the passage, because Nibiru is approaching us from the direction of the sun, and it zooms right by. It is not a collision, although it's described as colliding and striking, and that's wrong. It's always been a close passage that forces a crustal shift. But as it comes for the passage, it does block the sun's view. It's like an eclipse. It eclipses the sun, and the sun shines through all that red dust, and so the red dust is writhing and blowing and toward us, pulled here by our gravity, blown at us by the North Pole of Nibiru, which is magnetic, and it's blowing. It's a charged tail, and we're a magnetic planet, and the whole, no wonder people go crazy, or have been described as going crazy, when they survive this. And the Zetas have said a lot of people are going to have post-traumatic stress. 43% of humanity, of the survivors, will be affected in some way, in some ways wacky, because of the stress of what they're going through. Quoting the book of Revelations, these things must shortly come to pass. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the kinds of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondsman, and every free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. So, we haven't even gotten to Mother Shipton. She goes on and on, too. Trumpets are described, which was a confusing sign. People said, well, what do the trumpets mean? And now it kind of pieced together because of the earth changes that have happened since Nibiru arrived. Trumpeting actually started happening in various places around the world in 2011. But it was the trumpets heard in Jerusalem in 2016 that got heads turning. Trumpeting was predicted in the book of Revelations and in the Kolbrin. But once again, trumpeting alone cannot give us a timeline. Yeah, but how soon before the actual pole shift does trumpeting start? We don't know. Not just in Jerusalem where trumpeting was heard, but in Kiev and Belarus. This was predicted, quoting the Kolbrin. The days of stillness were followed by a time when the noise of trumpeting and shrilling was heard in the heavens, and the people became as frightened beasts without a headsman, and the doom shape thundered sharply in the heavens and shot out bright lightning. Then a voice like 10,000 trumpets was heard. The whole of the land moved, and mountains melted. The sky itself roared like 10,000 lions in agony. Mountains melted in that part of the world because if you have a crustal shift where the crust is thin, it can create heat that will melt rock. And we are told, like in Oregon or along the north coast of the U.S., that where you have subduction of plates like the Juan de Fuca plate, etc., you can have that rapid subduction. They said, don't be in the valleys, where the cool streams are. Get up in the hills a ways because it can turn into molten rock, and you have that. It recorded from the Indians, of the Northwest, and also from around the Middle East, and people recorded the ground melting. Quoting the book of Revelations, And the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of trees were burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. The trumpets take different forms. They're heard as multitonal horns, or even a howl, as in the Tampa Bay howl. Per the Zetas, it is enclosed water vibrating. You know, the thing about Zeta talk is it gives us this practical rationale. Here's why the moon's face torques, you know, instead of just a little bit, torques by 90 degrees. And they explain it, you know, and like the last weeks in the Earth's, you know, sun rising in the west, they explained it. Well, who can explain that? But they did. And it's totally logical. Okie doke, here we go. Quoting Zeta talk. Kiev lies south of a dam on the Kiev Reservoir, a damming of the Dnieper River. A vibration of the dam itself, like the strings of a violin, would resonate in the water, thus not only creating a vibration in the ground, but a vibration in the air. There are musical instruments that use a water-filled container to increase the vibration, so the vibration affects the air and sends a tone forth. Glasses of water filled to different heights, when tapped, create a vibrating tone due to the water surface affecting the air. Have you ever seen that where children, there's a bunch of water glasses. This one's full, that one's partially full, this one's almost empty. You know, and running a finger around the top of the glass. You know, and then you can make music, boing, 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 by just tapping the glass. Well, it's tapping the glass because the ground is vibrating a lot. The plates are under stress. You know, this plate wants to move, that place resists. You know, and you have going on in the rock and any enclosed water. There was a place out in Montana that had multitonal sounds, and it was just wonderful because it was a deep river, and there were different reservoirs as you went along the river, and you could hear it was chords. It was beautiful, like making music. I thought, wow. All right, the frightening image of Nibiru in the skies, surrounded by his writhing tail, which is blowing toward the earth during the hour of the passage, is described in the book of Revelation and by Mother Shipton. This is accompanied by earthquakes and tidal waves. Red dust turning the ponds and rivers blood red is part of the horror. Edgar Cayce described the geological changes as a result of the pole shift, but once again, we are not getting a time frame. Okay, but it's coming up. I've got it for you here. Quoting the book of Revelations, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 horns upon his heads. And the third angel poured out his vial upon the rivers and fountains of water, and they became blood. And there was a great earthquake, such as not since men were upon the earth. And every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. Mother Shipton does a good job. Anybody who knows about her, she lived in Britain, UK, ugly old woman, you know, and she predicted she would be burned as a witch, but she never was. But she was describing clearly, she knew about this or was guided or given this information by something or somebody, because she was very precise. And I quote Mother Shipton, "For 7 days and 7 nights man will watch this awesome sight. The tides will rise beyond their ken and bite away the shores, and then the mountains will begin to roar, and earthquakes split the plain to shore. Not every soul on earth will die as the dragon's tail goes sweeping by. Not every land on earth will sink, but these will wallow in stench and stink of rotting bodies of beast and man, of vegetation crisped on land." So she doesn't pull any punches. Quoting Edgar Cayce, "As to the changes, physical again, the earth will be broken up in the western portions of America. The greater portion of Japan must go into the sea. The upper portion of Europe will be changed as in the twinkling of an eye. Land will appear off the east coast of America. So they could never get a date from him either, but he was asked, let's see, here we can go on with it. He was asked, and he said the pole shift, and he said something about, what will happen in 2000 and 2001, and he said, when there is a pole shift. So, but it didn't happen in 2000 and 2001, but he was perhaps saying it's coming. And I quote again from Cayce, there will be the upheavals in the Arctic and in the Antarctic that will make the eruption of volcanoes in the torrid areas, and there will be shifting then of the poles, so that where there has been those of a frigid or the semi-tropical will become the more tropical, and moss and ferns will grow. Changing climate, shifting crust, the Zetas have described it as a 90-degree shift. Indeed, India will become the new South Pole. The bulge of Brazil will become the new North Pole. The new equator will run down through the Bering Strait, through Antarctica, and back up through the Atlantic. So big changes. But that's just the Zeta Talk prediction, which one should take with a grain of salt because it's just in the opinion of the Zetas. And in the opinion of Edgar Cayce, apparently. Then there is the mysterious 40 days prediction in the Hadiths. The Prophet Muhammad predicted that a fake Christ, which seems to be similar to the Antichrist of Christianity, would reign on earth for 40 days. But this 40 days seems to equate to a year, plus a month, plus a week. And I quote the Hadiths. This was a mystery. Somebody sent this to me. And he was such a delightful gentleman. He was a scholar. And he said, this is a mystery that has puzzled, Muslim scholars for 1,400 years. And what does it mean? And we put our heads together, and this is what the Zetas came up with. So this is what was in the Hadiths. The false Messiah would live on earth for 40 days, in which one day would be like a year, one day would be like a month, one day would be like a week, and all of his days would be like your days. Well, that certainly sounds like a puzzle. So we gave it to the Zetas, and what could it mean? And this is the Zeta Talk interpretation. One day like a year preceding the last weeks is predicting the confused weather and sunset times that result from the daily earth wobble gone wild. We have predicted that the seasons will, quote, blend into one another, end quote. Thus that year will seem not to have distinct seasons, but a mix. The wobble can make the sun rise and then set again, as has been documented. Yes, it has. So night and day may become confused as the wobble worsens. Muhammad is predicting this confused period to last at least a year, and then things go back to normal. Rotation returns, and Nibiru is gone from the skies, having moved on. So they went on to say that's the one day like a year. It was his one day would be like a year. One day would be like a month. Well, the last weeks, according to the Zetas, is 7.3 weeks, more like a month. And one day would be like a week. They said that rotation stoppage would last 5.9 days, which is like a week. So, meanwhile, the monster cometh. Nibiru has been described as a beast with 7 heads. Per Alberto's latest photo, might this mean that the moons traveling closely behind Nibiru, forming a string of pearls, look like heads on a body? Believe me, they do. He had a photo, and it's still in the Planet X photos on the Ning, fairly recent, and it showed a string of pearls close just above where Nibiru was, and I thought, wait a minute, let's count those pearls. Are they 7? Because they are so close to Nibiru, if you saw it writhing around in front of or nearby Nibiru as it approaches for a passage, that would look like 7 heads on a beast. And quoting the book of Revelations, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And the third angel poured out his vial upon the rivers and mountains of waters, and they became blood. So that they may be describing this string of pearls, which if you saw that picture, you would be dumbstruck. At how close it is to where Nibiru is located. I usually have to do some changing. I take his filtered photos. I change the hue. I invert the color. I do some lightning and changing that type of thing. And I say, there it is. That has to be Nibiru, where it is. It's not the bright lights that are the moon swirls that swirl under the sun, around to the left and up on the top. It is at the 4 o'clock position. And mind you, when we look at the dawn, the ecliptic goes from lower left to upper right, so it's more like, the 3 o'clock position. And then at dusk, it's from upper left to lower right. So now Nibiru is more at the 6 or 7 o'clock position. So you have to take time of day. Are you in the northern hemisphere or the southern? And what's the slant of the ecliptic to kind of know where to look. So I try to do that because people keep saying, well, where is it? I can't see it. And it's so shrouded by the red dust and then when you have a second sun rising and setting, it's because it's a dawn or dusk, and it's the angle, that sunlight bounces off this big dust cloud that's shrouding Nibiru, and it is so bright that it looks like, oh, there's the sun, and wait a minute, what's that over there? That's the sun. But usually it's dawn or dusk. So that it has different appearances. And we go through all that on the, poleshifting.com. In the Planet X photos, it's described. And on my website, zetatalk.com, where I talk about Planet X personas, or as we now call it, Nibiru. Everyone's calling it Nibiru in the press, so I've switched to calling it Nibiru all the time. So that Planet X was a confused term and deliberately confused. Everything from Eris and Sedna to every little rock, was called Planet X on purpose so that it became confused. So we use Nibiru all the time because there's no confusing that one. Well,
exactly.
What do you think, Andre?
Well,
Are we in that year?
I'm not one to make predictions, especially on air. I know that things are getting interesting as far as earth changes go, with a lot of earthquakes, especially, and the fireballs continue to get worse, and a lot more reporting of what your examples as well, with the twilight into overnights. Little peaking of the sun around the horizon in the northern climes, especially Alaska, as we've seen before. I think last year at this time, right, Nancy? It pops up and drops back down because of the wobble.
Yes.
So,
yeah, up there and in Mexico at sunset. There's a cam that looks out and has captured that. There it goes down, and wait a minute, it's back up again, and now it goes down again.
Yeah.
So yes, we're starting to see that.
Almost like a bobber, on the bobber on the lake. If you're fishing, it goes down and pops back up, and then goes down again. It's like,
yep.
What is? If people see this live or with their own eyes, they are going to question everything. Yep. Because you can't deny any of that. So hopefully we're on the right track.
Exactly. So we're not. It's not 100% laid out when the year starts, but when it's describing where every day in that year will seem like the same day. It'll be so confused that people will be able to say, is this still Tuesday or not, And I don't think we're there yet, but on the other hand, when you're talking about prophecy like this, it's how you take it, and it can be taken so many different ways. And, of course, I get this panic email from people. Is that it? Should I pack up my bug-out bag and grab the dog and run? So you have to say, you won't mistake the last weeks. That's what I always say.
No.
And the Zetas have described it exactly. It starts with a severe wobble, and then the 3 days of darkness for the northern hemisphere is unmistakable. And for the southern hemisphere, well, they have 3 days where it's just day all the time. And then sunrise west, where the earth turns upside down, and slowly rights itself over a period of 6 days, and then slowing the rotation to a stop where you stopped for 5.9 days. That's the time, folks, when you should be grabbing the kids and running for the hills. If you haven't done it before, do it then. The problem is, of course, that you're really just, you might have blocked roads. You might have bridges that have gone down because of earthquakes and the like. When you get up on the hills, there you sit. Where's your chickens and goats and gardens? You have a long walk ahead of you. So we always suggest that people go to their safe location early, get into chickens and goats and gardening and all that, those staples, those plants that are staples, things like pumpkins, things like duckweed on the marsh, that is so high protein, things that it doesn't have to be a fancy diet, but something, earthworm gardens, put the green trash, let the earthworms grow there and harvest them. They're 82% protein. Get going. The earlier you get going, the better.
Right. But also to kind of review that too, one of the first things with the last weeks, and just a refresher on that, Nancy, the last weeks are 7.3 weeks, 7.2 weeks?
7.3, but they include
the
slowing
severe
rotation.
Wobble. Right.
I think they do, and that's why it's actually. I'm going there to find it. Key articles. Last week's. Come on, where's the last week's countdown? 9 days of a severe wobble, which I don't. When the Hadiths
we're not
talking
there yet.
about, it's like a month. Oh no. And also we haven't finished the 7 of 10 plate movements. African roll is supposed to create a break in Gibraltar by an additional 125 miles, a break of the Sinai, on either side of 50 miles. That hasn't happened. We haven't had the African roll. We haven't had the New Madrid split. So we're still in the 7 of 10. We are overlapping with the 8 of 10. It's true, but it's not tomorrow. Let's make that clear. The last weeks are, I'm looking at it now, 9 days of a severe wobble. If the Hadiths are equating that to a month, you have to take that better than a week off, and so now we're down to like 6 weeks, Then 4.5 days of a static lean to the left, where we're laid out on our side, and 2.5 days of a progression into the days of darkness and 3 days of darkness, 6 days of sunrise west, 18 days of a rotation slowing, and then this last 5.9 days of rotation stoppage, that's covered in the Hadiths by the day, that it has a year and a month and a week, rather, say. So if you take the severe wobble off and take off the 5.9 days and say that's in the week, then it does fit to be a month. 4.5, 2.5, 3, 6, and 18 is a month. So it's remarkably close to Zeta talk. And I thought, given how accurate what they said was, what Muhammad said, and is quoted as saying, let's put it that way, we can start to look for that year when it seems like every day is like another. Snow in summer. The middle of winter feels like summer. And what people were describing, and they get up at midnight and it's still twilight. You can go out and read something outside. And we're not even talking about full moon or anything like that. Where is it night or is it day? Shifting around. Is it summer or is it winter? We're not there yet. But people, we're starting to get there. Yep. And when we do start to get there, start counting that year. Yep.
So what is the hint?
That's the hint. That's the hint is that's how you would identify that year where, it is so confused that it seems like night and day and summer and winter are being confused so that it's all a mix.
The blending of the seasons.
Summers, blending of the seasons and even blending of the night and day. If we have people on Godlike Production that were talking about how all across the United States and even in Europe they were saying, I got up at midnight and it was still light out. How can that happen? In this type of thing will be on the increase so that night and day will be mixed.
Yep. And then it will be undeniable that we're in the realm of a pole shift, and then we can just stop the cover up and just move on and start getting ready, right? Like normal people. And I think people are beginning to. They're beginning to do that. There was an article that I was noting that somebody in South Carolina, which are very religious, it's the Bible Belt, right, and saying that they felt that they should have what they call survival communities, where very religious, and into rural areas, out of the cities and into rural areas, and form communities of basically Bible thumpers, but these are people within the church, they know each other, and they're saying, and the idea was, communal, helping each other, sharing, that type of thing, and nobody's trying to get rich quick and all that. That's the kind of thing that has to happen, and more, and it is happening more and more. Not where somebody advertises and says, "Send me your $10,000 and I'll set aside an acre for you," and then you find out later that it's in the middle of a swamp. And where did your money go? You're supposed to rely on people that you know. And friends and family or the church or an organization or people you associate with, so that it's not a con, and start to get rural and start to get serious about self-sufficiency. So this is on the increase. It's quiet. It's not being blasted. Every once in a while you hear about it, rich people going into their bunkers and that, but they are not going to survive well. Because they're all going to turn on each other, and they're going to be overtaken by their militia. Well, I got my soldiers there, and I paid for them. And, but why should the soldiers? Whoops, the guns have been pointed against the the king and the wealthy person and the prince, and whoops, it's not going to be pleasant, because these people are all grasping, power mad, and the people that they hire to protect them are going to say, ha ha ha, we can just take over, and they will. Yeah, that's why the survival community, with social media and the instant connection all over the world with, internet, I just think that, discern and really research who you're going into your planning for your survival community. If it's somebody you just met on the internet and they're like, oh yeah, we'll help you out, just come out here and give us, some down payments and, cashier's checks and stuff like that. They'll take your money fast enough. Just be careful.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's it's going to run rampant, and because panic people will do anything. They say, what can I do? I need help, It's we hope for the best, and that FEMA, etc., will put people into camps after big earthquakes, and that there'll be enough good people to set it right. But oftentimes it's going to be local government, local, natural leaders that emerge, and the people enacting their own rules about what's okay and what's not okay, because the police, the courts, the military, they're going to be overwhelmed. So the sooner you can get into a good group and get out in the country and start gardening and the like, or Uncle Bob's farm, at least go there and and get familiar with what it takes to run it, and so you have a place to go, and that type of thing. I say to people, don't you have an Uncle Bob that has a farm? It's just yeah.
Yeah. Well, one would hope so. I mean, but don't wait till last minute, though. I mean, the last weeks are, like Nancy said, 7.3 weeks. That includes the 6 days or the 9 days of the severe wobble.
Rotation
so
stoppage
take that out of there.
Yeah, and the problem is that we're going to get into more and more wobble, and that we don't want people panicking and saying, oh, wait a minute, the sun rose at the North Pole. That must mean, that we're into the severe wobble. It might just be an aberration, because the wobble is all over the place. It moves about, it changes about, and it reacts. It can be this way, and there was a way over this way, and we're back over that way, and so but we still are doing the 7 of 10 plate movements. We document that all the time on Zeta Talk and the pole shifting.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. That's like a lot of these trackings, and then the Alberto picture that you were talking about, and a more recent picture or capture from, I don't know if it was Alberto, but a new position for Nibiru on looks like a satellite view that you posted or commented on yesterday, Nancy, on the pole shifting.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember.
That's a good place.
Yeah. Yep.
Great place to check out those images is the Pole Shift, POLE shift.ning.com. There's a lot of blogs there that track what we've been talking about. You don't have to rely on just ancient prophecy. You can look at real-time data and some of these images, as well as the earthquake tracking, fireballs. Another thing that people don't realize too is like if not only the bridges and the roads would be affected by the seismic, but also derailing trains. So there's a blog for that on the pole shifting as well. So also always the newsletter has great information. You can find that at zetatalk.com. That's the site for all of the newsletters and all the reference materials, like the last week's, how to view Nibiru / Planet X. We're calling it Nibiru now, of course, and or still, I should say. But Zetatalk.com has been around since, what, Nancy, 1995?
1995. It's 20 years now. 20 years and going to 21.
Pushing it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
January of 1995, right. Yep. I remember that so clearly. Well,
and
I think
the
website started mid-year, and I started doing Zeta Talk that year. It was in Michael Lindemann's online chat, ISCNI, Contact with Extraterrestrial Intelligence or some such. And somebody said, well, some of you guys that are contactees, take our questions to your aliens and bring back the answers. And I said, I'm getting my questions answered all the time. What do you want to know? And there we went. And it took off, and people either hated it or loved it. Yeah, that's how it started. Yeah, and they either loved it or hated it, and there's nobody's passive about it. That's because it has a ring of truth, and it scares people. People that are not themselves contactees, although many are now these days, but it scares them. And they think, well, what does this mean? And it was a scary message to talk about the passage and what's coming. It was like, well, can't we avoid that? Can't we do something if we really wish really hard?
Yeah.
Can't it go away? And it's not going to. It's a natural occurrence. It didn't go away in the past, and it ain't going to go away this time either.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Nancy, that's a lot of information. What's your working title for this on the YouTube? Just for folks who are listening to this for the first time, we do a YouTube version of it. Yeah.
Many voices, same message, or maybe same message, many voices, but on the YouTube, it'll be by date, the July 3rd, date. I post a link to them on my website. I have interviews, and it has all these USA EBN interviews monthly, and you can find that it'll be the most recent one. Yep.
Excellent.